I'm 42, divorced for 5 years, and I thought I had a pretty open, trusting relationship with my daughter until last weekend, when everything blew up. I'm still trying to wrap my head around how deeply I was betrayed, not just by her, but by someone I thought I'd buried in the past. My daughter, Maya, just turned 20. She's a sophomore in college, lives in the dorms, and has always been fiercely independent, sometimes to a fault. We've been through a lot together, especially since her dad and I split. He cheated. It was messy. She was 15 at the time and caught him herself. After that, she refused to speak to him for years. She blamed him for tearing our family apart, and honestly, so did I. He tried to reach out a few times over the years, but it always ended the same way, silence from Maya and a blocked number. I was proud of her for standing her ground, for protecting herself. I thought we had finally put that part of our lives behind us. Apparently not. 3 days ago, I got a call from the university's housing office. They said there had been a security issue involving Maya's dorm room and that they needed to speak with a guardian. At first, I thought she'd been hurt or something had happened to her. But what they told me left me speechless. According to the report, a man had been found living in her dorm room for several weeks. A grown man. With no student ID. No documentation. He'd been sneaking in and out during quiet hours, showering in the gym, and sleeping there most nights. It had only come to light because a roommate reported hearing a male voice repeatedly and finally told the RA. They sent me the footage. I opened the email and stared at the screen. And that's when I saw him. My ex-husband. Maya's father. The man she hadn't spoken to in nearly 5 years. He looked older, thinner, beard scruff, cheap clothes, but it was him. No doubt. He was walking confidently down the hallway, hoodie up, carrying a bag of groceries. Like this was all completely normal. I sat frozen in front of the screen, unable to breathe. Why was he there? How did he even find her? And why would she let him in after everything? That night, I drove 2 hours straight to her college. I didn't call. I didn't warn her. I just got in the car and went. She wasn't in her dorm when I arrived, but I waited. Eventually, she walked in with coffee and headphones on, totally casual. When she saw me sitting on her bed, her face dropped. She knew. She tried to act surprised, like it was no big deal. Said she'd only let him stay for a few days because he had nowhere else to go. Claimed it was a one-time favor. But she couldn't lie for long, especially not when I told her about the security footage. That's when the walls came down. And I found out the truth. And read it. The truth was worse than anything I had imagined. She sat down slowly, like her legs had given up on holding her upright. I expected panic, maybe even guilt, but instead she looked defensive. She crossed her arms and said something I'll never forget. He's my dad. I have the right to see him. The words hit harder than I expected. Not because she was wrong, I'd never tried to stop her from rebuilding a relationship with him, but because she knew what he had done. She was there when I found the texts, when I confronted him in our kitchen, when he packed up and walked out. She cried in my arms for weeks. She swore she'd never forgive him. Now she was saying I was being unreasonable? She started explaining. Said he reached out to her last winter just to check in. That he'd been sleeping in his car after losing his job, struggling to stay afloat. She felt sorry for him. One message turned into daily calls. Then, when he showed up in town a month ago, she couldn't leave him out in the cold. So she let him in. Into her dorm. Into her life. And she kept it a secret from everyone, me, her friends, even the university. I asked her the obvious question, why didn't you tell me? Her answer? Because you'd freak out. You always do. I sat there staring at my daughter, my fiercely smart, independent, no-nonsense daughter, and I realized I didn't recognize her anymore. She wasn't the girl who used to fact-check everything, who didn't even let me lie about her age to get a cheaper movie ticket. Now she was hiding a grown man in a college dorm like this was some kind of heartfelt indie movie. I told her it wasn't safe. That this wasn't about her right to see her dad, it was about choices, boundaries, reality. I reminded her of who he really was. Not the sad, sorry man who showed up with stories of rock bottom, but the man who manipulated me, drained our savings, and cheated on me with 2 women from his office. She didn't say a word. Instead, she started crying. And that's when it all tumbled out. She hadn't just let him sleep there, she'd been supporting him. Buying his groceries. Paying his phone bill. Covering gas money with the leftover funds from her student grant. She even skipped a couple of her therapy sessions because he needed the money more. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was sacrificing her own mental health, her own education, for him? Then came the final blow. She told me he'd been pressuring her to ask me for money. That he wanted her to soften me up and convince me to give him a second chance, not just as a father, but as a partner. Apparently, he believed I might still be emotionally vulnerable. Her voice cracked when she said it. She knew he was using her. She admitted it. But she still thought she could fix him. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stood up, picked up my bag, and told her I'd be at a hotel nearby if she wanted to talk. I didn't sleep that night. The image of my daughter trying to rebuild a father who had destroyed so much, while letting him manipulate her all over again, haunted me. And even worse? She still wasn't done defending him. Because the next morning, I got a text. And what she said changed everything again. The text came at 6:43 a.m., just as the light started creeping through the hotel curtains. I hadn't slept, just laid there staring at the ceiling, wondering where I went wrong as a mother. When my phone buzzed, I hoped it was her saying she'd kicked him out, that she saw through it now, that she was sorry. Instead, it read, "If you try to report him to campus security again, I won't speak to you anymore." That was it. No love you. No explanation. Just a warning. I stared at the message for a long time, trying to wrap my head around how we got here. How the same girl who once made me promise I'd never invite him to her high school graduation was now threatening me for doing what any parent would, trying to protect her. But something about the wording got under my skin. Again. I hadn't called campus security. I never made a report. They contacted me. They found him because of another student's complaint. So why would she think it was me? Unless, he told her that. And that's when the puzzle pieces started shifting in my head. He was trying to wedge us apart. On purpose. If he could get her to distrust me, he'd be the only person in her corner. And knowing him, that was exactly what he wanted. Because it's what he always did. Divide. Isolate. Manipulate. Still, I didn't respond. I figured she needed space to process. She'd cool down. She always did. But a few hours later, I made a mistake. I logged onto Facebook. There it was. A post on Maya's timeline, just 2 hours old. A photo. Her and her dad, sitting in what looked like a cafe near campus. He was grinning like he'd won something. She was smiling, but it looked forced. The caption? People change. Sometimes they deserve a second chance. That's when I broke. I didn't comment. I didn't message. I didn't even breathe for a full minute. I just stared at that image, my ex-husband sitting there like a reformed saint while my daughter defended him to the world. But it was the comments that killed me. One of her friends replied, "Wait, is that your dad? I thought he was in jail or something." Another said, "This the same guy who ghosted your birthday 3 years in a row?" And Maya replied, "He's trying now. That's what matters." I wanted to scream. But more than that, I wanted to know, what had he told her? So I did something I hadn't done in years. I messaged him. I didn't expect a reply. But I got one. Fast. 3 dots appeared instantly, like he'd been waiting. And what he sent next made my stomach drop. Because he wasn't just staying with her. He wasn't just playing the victim. He was trying to move back in, with me. His message started with a winking emoji. Then, "Guess the universe is funny, huh?" I sat there, fingers shaking over the keyboard. I hadn't spoken to this man in almost 5 years, not since the divorce papers were signed. And now here he was, slipping back into my life like no time had passed, like he hadn't left our daughter crying on the front porch when she turned 16 and he never showed up with the birthday gift he promised. The next line hit harder. "Maya told me you were asking about me. I knew you'd come around eventually." That's when I realized just how deep he'd gotten. He thought I was interested. He thought I cared. And worse, he thought Maya wanted us to reconnect. My heart started racing. I responded, short and sharp, "I didn't ask about you. Campus security called me. Don't ever twist my daughter into your fantasy." His reply came so fast it was like he hadn't even read mine. "You know, maybe this was supposed to happen. You, me, Maya, healing. One house. Starting over." That wasn't just delusion. That was a plan. He was trying to worm his way back into our lives by using our daughter as a bridge. I didn't answer. I took a screenshot of the message. Then another, when he sent a follow-up telling me how he still had the box of our wedding photos and that Maya had asked to see them. I knew instantly, Maya hadn't asked for anything. That was his way in. His usual tactic. Nostalgia. Regret. Making his chaos sound poetic. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. But I didn't. Instead, I drove back to campus and waited. I didn't go to her dorm. I just parked across the street and watched from my car. I didn't know what I was even looking for until it happened. I saw him. Wearing one of Maya's college sweatshirts, carrying a bag of takeout, strolling across campus like he belonged there. That's when I realized he wasn't just squatting in her room anymore. He was embedding himself into her life, and nobody had stopped him. So I made a decision. One I knew she wouldn't like. One that might cost me my relationship with her. But I had to do it. Because the man I divorced wasn't a lost soul. He was a parasite. And he'd just latched onto the last person I had left. I didn't wait. I got out of the car and crossed the street fast, heart thudding so hard I could feel it in my ears. He hadn't seen me yet, he was too busy laughing into his phone, probably spinning another lie, probably to Maya. I caught up to him just as he was about to head into the campus building. I called his name once, sharp. He turned and froze when he saw me. For a split second, there was this flicker of something, maybe guilt, maybe just annoyance that I'd caught him playing house in public. Then he smiled. That smug, self-satisfied grin I used to see every time he won an argument by gaslighting me into silence. I hadn't missed it. He opened his mouth like he was going to greet me. I cut him off. I told him we were going to the housing office, now. His smile faded. He started protesting, said it would make a scene, said I was overreacting, said he'd already sorted things out with Maya. That phrase, sorted things out, like my daughter was some minor inconvenience in a story he was rewriting for his benefit. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I looked him dead in the eye and told him if he didn't come with me, I'd call campus security and hand over the footage. All of it. Every screenshot. Every message. Including the one where he talked about one house, starting over. That wiped the smirk clean off his face. He followed me. Begrudgingly. But he followed. At the housing office, I explained everything, his presence in the dorm, the violation of policy, the risk to student safety, even Maya's manipulated role in all of it. They were stunned, but not shocked. Apparently, they'd suspected more was going on, but hadn't had solid proof. Until now. The woman behind the desk called security right there. Asked him to wait outside. He didn't argue. Didn't look at me. Just walked out, still holding the bag of takeout like that's what hurt most, that dinner would get cold. I didn't see him again that day. But the damage was done. When I finally got a hold of Maya, she was furious. Said I blindsided her. Said I humiliated her father. Said I went behind her back. But the one that cut the deepest? She said I made her choose. And just like that, I realized she didn't see what I saw. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I told her she didn't have to choose. That I'd never asked her to cut him out again. But that letting him live in her dorm, letting him use her money, letting him twist her view of me, that wasn't love. That was damage. She didn't reply. Just turned and walked away. I stood there alone in the hallway outside her dorm, surrounded by students rushing past, laughing, texting, planning their weekends. And I felt this hollow space open up inside me. My daughter had chosen him. Not because he deserved it, but because he knew exactly how to make her believe he did. 2 days passed before I heard from her again. 2 painfully quiet, suffocating days where every message I didn't get felt like a punch. I didn't text. I didn't call. I wanted her to have space. I just hoped she'd use it to think. Then, on the 3rd night, I got an email. Not a text. Not a call. An email, cold, formal, distant. Subject line, clarification. It started with, I want you to know I'm not mad anymore, but I need you to respect that I'm going to have a relationship with Dad whether you like it or not. I had to stop reading right there for a second. Because there it was. The choice. Clear. Not spoken in anger this time, but in that unervingly calm tone that said she'd made up her mind. She went on to say she'd convinced campus housing not to press charges. That her roommate had moved out. That Dad had found a temporary room at a local boarding house and she was helping him with groceries until he got on his feet. And then came the line that made my blood run cold. He's going to use the money from Grandma's trust to get a car and start a delivery job soon. What? Money. I didn't even know she had access to the trust yet. My mom had left it for Maya in her will, college expenses only, locked until she turned 25 unless it was used for school-related costs. But something wasn't adding up. I picked up the phone. Called the trustee, the lawyer handling my mother's estate. And that's when everything unraveled. Maya hadn't touched the trust. He had. 3 weeks earlier, my ex-husband had filed a formal request with the estate lawyer claiming emergency hardship on Maya's behalf, complete with forged documents, including a letter pretending to be from me, saying Maya needed funds to stay enrolled due to financial strain. The trustee had flagged it, denied the request, but that wasn't what scared me. What scared me was how close he had gotten, how deeply he'd planned this, How easy it had been for him to slip back into her life, earn her trust, and almost steal from her before she even knew the money was there. He wasn't interested in healing. He wasn't here for fatherhood. He was circling something bigger. I realized then, this was never about Maya. She was just the key. The real target was me. I didn't wait this time. I drove straight to the boarding house listed on the trustee's report, the one he'd put down as his current residence. A yellow two-story with peeling paint and an overgrown yard, the kind of place that felt halfway between temporary and forgotten. I sat in my car for a few minutes, trying to convince myself I was overreacting. That maybe he'd made a mistake. That maybe I'd find some version of the man I used to know. But I already knew better. I marched up the porch and rang the bell. A guy in a stained shirt and pajama pants answered. Said yeah, he was here, the guy with the beard who talks too much, third room down the hall. I didn't knock. I opened the door and walked in. He was sitting at a desk with a laptop open, headphones in, typing fast. He didn't notice me right away, which gave me just enough time to glance at the screen. Spreadsheets. Names. Columns labeled loan offers, outreach, backers. And one tab that made me freeze. Rebuilding fatherhood, a GoFundMe journey. I leaned closer. The page was live. Dozens of lines of text, his story. The lost years. The estranged daughter. The cold-hearted ex-wife who refused to let him reconnect. Pictures of him and Maya at the cafe. A video clip of her laughing. He'd edited the narrative into something heart-tugging. Polished. Strategic. He was monetizing our trauma. I spoke, loud enough to cut through his headphones. He flinched when he saw me. Then, like he'd rehearsed it, he slid the headphones off and smiled like we were old friends bumping into each other at the grocery store. I didn't let him speak. I told him I knew about the trust fund. I knew about the forged documents. And I knew about the GoFundMe campaign he hadn't bothered to tell Maya he launched in her name. His face went slack. But only for a second. Then he did what he always did, pivoted. Said it was a misunderstanding, that he was going to tell her, that the money wasn't for him, it was for their future. Said he had plans. Big ones. A podcast. A blog. Maybe even a book. People eat this stuff up, he said, like it was noble. Like exploiting his own child for internet sympathy was just smart business. That's when I realized something I should have seen a long time ago. He didn't come back because he missed us. He came back because he saw value in us. Our history. Our pain. Our narrative. We weren't a family. We were content. And Maya? She was the star of a redemption arc he was trying to sell to strangers for donations. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just told him calmly, clearly, that I had already forwarded everything, the fake letter, the GoFundMe screenshots, the texts, to my lawyer and the trustee. That if he didn't shut the campaign down by the end of the day, I'd have no problem pressing charges for fraud, harassment, and identity theft. He didn't reply. Just stared at me like he couldn't figure out how I got ahead of him. And then, just as I turned to leave, he said something under his breath. So quiet I almost missed it. She'll never forgive you for this. And for the first time. I wasn't sure if he was wrong. Maya showed up at my door 2 days later. No warning. No text. Just the sound of knuckles on wood and my daughter standing there, hoodie on, arms crossed, looking smaller than I remembered. I opened the door and said nothing. She stepped in without a word, dropped her bag on the floor, and stood in the entryway like she wasn't sure if she wanted to be here or not. Then she spoke. You sent it to the lawyer? I nodded. Her eyes were red, she'd been crying, maybe for hours. There was something different about her. Not angry anymore. Not defiant. Just hollow. She pulled out her phone, unlocked it, and showed me the GoFundMe page. It was gone. Taken down. But not before over 1,000 people had seen it. Hundreds of dollars in donations had come in. And now? Now there were angry comments from donors demanding refunds. People who felt tricked, betrayed, lied to. And Maya, whose face was in the video, was getting blamed. She told me she'd found out everything the night before. A friend had seen the campaign and messaged her, saying I didn't know things were that bad and asked if she was okay. That's when she looked it up herself. She didn't speak for a full 5 minutes after that. Just stared at the screen. Watched the video again and again. Read the lines her father had written in first person, pretending to be her, talking about growing up without love, about a mother who pushed him away, about how she was finally brave enough to let him back in. She told me she vomited when she saw it. That's when I started to cry. Not because I was angry anymore, but because I saw it, clear as day. She finally understood. The manipulation. The twisted charm. The way he wrapped himself in pity until everyone forgot he was the one who lit the fire. Maya looked at me, eyes full of something I hadn't seen in weeks. Grief. He used me, she said. I didn't say, I told you so. I didn't say I knew. I just opened my arms, and she walked into them, shaking. We stood there in silence. Eventually, she told me everything, how he'd shown up with nothing but stories, how he cried in front of her, talked about being better, how he made her feel guilty for all the years of silence. She thought she was doing the right thing. Being the bigger person. Healing. But really, she was just the next opportunity. He'd drained every resource, every ounce of goodwill from everyone else, and when he had no one left, he came to the one person who still saw him as a father. And now? He had nothing again. Campus security had banned him from school property. The trustee flagged his name with legal enforcement. The donations were being reversed. His pity parade had officially ended. But even with all that, the damage he left behind wasn't going away overnight. Not from her life. Not from mine. After Maya told me everything, we just sat there for a while. No rush to fix anything. Just two people sitting with the weight of everything that had been broken. Eventually, she asked the question I knew was coming. Do we press charges? I didn't answer right away. I could see it on her face, she wanted someone else to decide. She was still torn between justice and guilt, between punishing him and protecting the man she wanted him to be. So I asked her what she wanted. She said she didn't know. But she couldn't keep pretending nothing happened. That felt worse than anything. So the next morning, we met with my lawyer. She laid it all out clearly, the forgery attempt on the trust fund, the impersonation via the GoFundMe campaign, and the use of Maya's identity and image without her consent. There were grounds for a case. Strong ones. Especially with the fake letter, the messages, and the donation records. But pressing charges meant more than just legal steps. It meant headlines. Attention. Maybe even court. It meant dragging their names, hers too, through a process that would feel like ripping open an already infected wound. Maya stayed quiet the entire time. Until the lawyer asked, "Do you want to move forward?" That's when she finally spoke. "I want to stop him from doing this to someone else." So that was it. The decision made. The lawyer began filing the formal complaint. The trustee agreed to submit his evidence. And we authorized the reporting of the fraud to the crowdfunding platform and the local authorities. There'd be interviews, questions, maybe subpoenas. But for the first time in weeks, I saw something settle in Maya's eyes. Resolve. That night, she couldn't sleep, so we stayed up late in the kitchen drinking tea. She admitted she felt stupid. Used. Like she should have seen it coming. But I told her the truth. She shouldn't have had to. Because it's not her job to second-guess her own father. It's not her responsibility to carry the burden of someone else's sickness just because he gave her half his DNA. What he did wasn't her mistake. It was his. And now? He was finally going to have to answer for it. The case didn't blow up like I'd feared. There were no tabloid articles, no viral outrage. Just paperwork. Emails. A quiet process that unfolded in the background of our lives, like an overdue storm that finally came and passed without the thunder. He never tried to deny it. Once the documents were submitted and the fraud was confirmed, the crowdfunding site shut down his account permanently. He was ordered to return the remaining funds, and the authorities flagged him for digital impersonation and attempted fraud. He didn't go to jail, but the legal black mark stuck. We didn't need revenge. We needed closure. And that's what we got. The day we got the email confirming that the complaint had been processed and the trust fund protected, Maya didn't say anything at first. She just looked out the window for a long time. Then, without turning to me, she said, "I don't think I want to see him again. Ever." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't sad. It was calm. Like she'd finally let go of something she'd been gripping too tightly for far too long. I told her that whatever she needed, distance, space, time, I would support it. No more pushing. No more trying to guide her choices. She had lived through her own version of him now. She didn't need my version anymore. A few weeks later, she went back to school. New dorm, new roommate, new boundaries. She joined a student support group. Started volunteering at the campus resource center. Said she wanted to help other people figure out how to deal with family chaos before it buried them. As for me, I went back to my routines. My quiet evenings. My garden. But something had shifted. Not just in how I saw him, but in how I saw us. Me and Maya. We weren't just mother and daughter anymore. We were survivors of the same storm. And we'd made it out. The last I heard, he moved out of state. Tried to start over again somewhere else. Probably with a new name, a new sob story, and someone else's generosity to burn through. But that's not our story anymore. Ours is this: we stood face to face with someone who wanted to rewrite the past, and we chose to live in the truth even when it hurt. Especially when it hurt. We didn't just take our lives back. We made sure he couldn't take them from anyone else. And in the end, that was enough.